Welcome to the second episode of International Voices in 2021. I'm your host and moderator, Udo Fluck, and I have the honor to oversee the Office of Global and Cultural Affairs in Arts Missoula. We started International Voices in February of last year, and if you are just joining us this month and you are curious about previous podcasts in our series, please visit artsmissoula.org, click on Global and Cultural Affairs, and visit Radio and Podcasts. International Voices is a monthly podcast brought to you by Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula and The Trail, 1033. We are excited to have Melissa Kilby join us from Girl Up headquarters in Washington, D.C. on International Voices today to launch and honor Women's History Month. Melissa Kilby has been leading Girl Up since 2011. Girl Up is a global leadership development initiative working to achieve gender equality and harness the often untapped power and passion of young people, most specifically teen girls, to make change in their communities and around the world. Melissa has recently been named to Fortune magazine's 40 Under 40 class of 2020. We are honored to have you join us from the nation's capital to discuss your global efforts in transforming a generation of girls to be a force for gender equality and social change. Welcome, Melissa Kilby.
Thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Same here. Let's start with our first question. Can you please tell our listeners about your organization, Girl Up?
Yes, I would love to. Girl Up is a global leadership development initiative. We are hosted at the United Nations Foundation, and we were actually started in 2010. So this last fall, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. Over the course of those 10 years, we have engaged with more than 85,000 girls around the world.
Oh, wow.
We started as an American campaign, really working to bring awareness to the issues facing adolescent girls in developing countries and in other parts of the world, inspiring young women here in the U.S. to take action and to open up their hearts and minds to understand really the situation of being a girl. And over the last 10 years, as things have evolved and the conversation has changed, and we have looked around the world and looked right here in the US in our backyards and have really taken stock that there is no place in the world where girls are equal to boys and women are equal to men. We've really evolved our mission to say that we are looking to achieve gender equality for every girl everywhere. Whether that is a girl in Missoula, Montana, or a girl in London in the United Kingdom, or in a village in Malawi, we're all fighting for the same goal. And how we do that actually is that we engage teen girls in social impact and social change. And while they're doing this important work in their communities, in their states, in their countries, and on a global stage, they're actually learning how to be leaders. They are leading, and they are building their identity as leaders as they go forth, into adulthood, and hopefully to join many people at all of the decision-making tables, rooms, stages where they can actually impact the policies that impact their lives.
Right. Now, you just said that your movement does not only advance girls' skills, rights, and opportunities to be leaders in all of the 50 US states, but also internationally. How many countries are connected to Girl Up?
So we have inspired Girl Up clubs in 125 countries to date. And if we look at our events, our global events, we've actually had participants in almost 170 countries. So it truly is a global movement for gender equality.
And quite impressive to have pulled this off in just 10 years.
We've definitely tapped into something, I will say that.
I agree. Now, how many girls are impacted through your organization in total?
Yeah, so we measure this in two ways. One, we have engaged about 85,000 girls within our Girl Up programming. So our Girl Up clubs, our Girl Up events, through things like our Global Leadership Summit, boot camps that we do, camps that we have, and a teen advisory board that we run. We also partner with the United Nations, and through our girls, primarily our girls fundraising efforts, we've provided grants to UNICEF, the UN Population Fund, UN Women, UNHCR, which is the UN High Commission for Refugees. And through those fundraising efforts and those grants, we've actually impacted another 100,000 girls with our UN partners.
Wow. Oh, that is impressive. My next question would have been, and you answered that already partially, who are your partners and investors in this? Because obviously, to have an organization that is truly an international organization, you need to have partners around the world.
Yeah. So our most important partner is the United Nations. Girl Up is hosted by the UN Foundation, which is a US-based nonprofit really working to advance the UN and the UN mission here in the United States. And so, through that association, the UN is one of our key and probably our most important collaborative partner.
Okay.
We also work with other nonprofits who also engage with girls here in the US and around the world, kind of at different levels. But from an investing perspective, we work with a lot of corporations, actually, a lot of brands that really like our audience and would like to support the empowerment of teenage girls, but also would probably like to be seen positively in the eyes of our audience.
Sure.
And then we also work with a lot of multinational corporations. So the fact that we are based in the US, that we started and originated in the US, but that we have this reach and presence around the world makes for just a really awesome partnership opportunity for a lot of companies. And then we have some really amazing individual donors. And our girls are out there doing all kinds of grassroots fundraising, hosting bake sales with their clubs or running races and getting donations in that way. So there is a grassroots fundraising strategy, really kind of accompanied by a lot of amazing corporations who have committed to helping us further our mission.
Okay. Now, I really like your slogan, "When girls rise, we all rise." Why is this so important?
So I think what we tap into with that sentiment is that this isn't a zero-sum situation. It is not an either or.
Right.
No one is trying to take equality away from anyone else. But when half of our population is not equal, and there is not anywhere in the world where that is the case, then what is that doing to the detriment of all of us?
Right.
We want it to be an inclusive statement so that there's room in that for collaborators and partners and allies and men and mothers and fathers and everyone who sort of maybe both care about their sons and their daughters, or want to really understand that it's not going to hurt me or take away from me if my female colleague has an equal opportunity, or if there's a policy in place that protects both me and my sister, so really just trying to lean into that idea that when women and girls are better off and more equal and have more equal access to opportunities, it is actually better for all of us.
Right. Okay. Now, Girl Up honors young women with the Girl Hero Award. Can you tell us a little more about the award and what the history is of the award? When did you first start giving it out, and who are you honoring with this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a really cool story, actually. So in 2011, the UN named the first International Day of the Girl, which is October 11th. So it became an internationally recognized and celebrated day specifically to highlight, champion, but also bring attention to the issues of adolescent girls. And we, as Girl Up, said, oh, great, this is going to be a very important day for us to bring new people into our community, to, celebrate the potential and power of girls. And so we did a lot of different campaigns over the years around International Day of the Girl. And about 2014, I think, we actually did a social media campaign that was #GirlHero. And so what we were asking our community to do was to tag their girl hero, a picture, a post, something to really call out these girl heroes in our lives, and then really kind of pass it on. Like, okay, now I've tagged you, now you tag someone. And
sure,
we decided that would actually just is the best campaign for that day. And so we've kept that going. We didn't continue to do a new campaign every year. We kind of just kept the pulse with this idea of girl hero and a girl hero, your girl hero, or girl heroes in general. And in 2018, we said, that sounds like an opportunity to create a fundraising event, an awards event, to really honor girl heroes in the world, within our own community, and to highlight our work, certainly, with these types of events and the types of people that we have honored. It brought a lot of wonderful exposure to our community and to our mission. So we launched the Girl Hero Awards in October of 2018, right around International Day of the Girl, to coincide with our Girl Hero campaign. And we have had three 3 years of awards. So we have not determined who our awards will be for this coming fall, but we always pair sort of influential women and leaders and public figures with girl heroes that we are also honoring within our own teen girl.
Oh, how nice. What a great idea. Okay. I had no idea that there is an International Day of the Girl. So I learned something from just listening to you. And that is what day you said, in October?
It's October 11th. Exactly.
Okay. Tell us about your experience as an expert on the next generation, specifically Gen Z girls, leadership and youth activism.
Yeah, so I would say the thing that I feel most privileged and lucky to be able to do as part of my job, the thing that is my career and that I earn a living and can take care of my family, is that I get to learn from and be pushed and be inspired by this incredible youth generation that I think the world really sees and understands their power in a way that I've had an inside scoop on really for the last 10 years. I think this generation, like previous generations in the past, I would say maybe not mine. I'm a product of the 80s, where activism wasn't really the theme of that decade. But this generation they seem to be living in this world much differently. From being socially connected, from being digitally connected to each other, across borders, across identities, across many of the boundaries that sort of life set for us over, before. Okay, this is your town, this is your newspaper, this is your school, this is your exposure. Well, this generation doesn't have those same limitations. And what that has meant, and what I have seen to be one of the very key and unique things about this current youth generation, is that they live in the world with a more openness and more empathy and more understanding. They're globally minded already because they are exposed to each other in a much more open and diverse way. And that has really impacted how they see everything.
Right.
And so I think that is partially what infuses their activism. I think the fact also that they have these platforms and megaphones attached to their fingers at all times has really shown them the power of their voices early. And they also care deeply about the issues that they've inherited. And they have such an understanding about these issues that I think previous generations, maybe as young people, didn't fully have that same broad scope unless it was something that personally affected them. And so this generation is just, they are activists by nature. They are empowered by nature because they have information and they have a platform and a megaphone. And I think in a lot of ways, it's good and amazing. In a lot of ways, that adds a lot of burden and pressure to young people that they feel the weight of it all in different ways. So there is certainly a flip side to that coin, but they push me to think about things that I haven't considered. They inspire me to follow in their lead, to be bold and to use the platform and privilege that I have. And I have learned more from them than I could ever teach. And I really see my job is to ensure that this movement that they are living or that they are leading is strong and sustainable and activated in a way that will further their goals.
Now, and thank you for that explanation. I'm trying to wrap my mind around the fact that you are talking about the sheer possibilities that are there. And as you said, in previous generations, there was less of a platform. There was less technology to further that. And Girl Up seems to help girls access their inner power to advance the skills and rights and opportunities of girls everywhere, right? So how do you accomplish that? What are some of the specific skills a young female can learn through her involvement in Girl Up?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, the skills for leadership are sort of universal, right? It doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy,
right.
Today, to lead today in this world and in this environment, certainly during a global pandemic, leaders are being called on to shift the way that they lead and to lead with empathy and through connection, right? And through collaboration and partnership. And I think that women and female leadership, sort of has always had that sort of inherent nature to it. So I think what we really try to do through our programming is give girls sort of tangible skills and tools, but also to give them real live opportunities to put those tools and skills into practice. So the fact that girls come to Girl Up because they want to make change, they come here to take action. So we're kind of pushing them towards that action, inspiring them to continue that action, and also, making sure that they have some real applicable opportunities to do that. I always like to say it's leadership in action. It's not academic or philosophical leadership tenets. It's like you go out, you convince a few of your friends that this is a good idea to join you. Then you all have to come together and decide what you're going to do. You have to build consensus. You have to set a goal. You have to plan, delegate, negotiate, navigate, and then you try to achieve that goal. And that is actually leading. And that is what, we as adults do out in our jobs or in our public positions or however we sort of lead as a verb. They're actually getting to do that via their experience with Girl Up. And I think the biggest part of it isn't as much a specific skill or tool that a girl needs, but more that she feels valued, that she's listened to, and that she is taken seriously so that she can tap that potential, that she has the confidence and the sort of, in turn, the respect to move that impact forward.
And yet, most of what you just said does not seem to be part of any standing curriculum. So it's really something that is not fully taught in a school setting. So Girl Up really connects nicely to any kind of public speaking efforts or any kind of leadership discussions that are happening in schools, but then it pushes that. It provides opportunities for so much more. Am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We like to say it's sort of what you don't learn in the classroom that actually will help you be successful in the real world.
So one could then argue that, we are learning a certain amount of skills in a classroom setting, and one could argue how specifically useful or not they might be. But why are these skills that you just mentioned that Girl Up teaches young females, why are they so important for every female in their academic as well as their professional life?
I think that when you have a transformation where you see yourself as a leader, you have seen yourself lead, you have led, no one can take that away from you. You can be nervous, you can be, you can have someone in your life in a classroom, in a job, in a team, dismiss you, but you already know better because you've already done it. And
so it's about self-confidence.
It's also about actualization, right? It's confidence because it's confidence based on something. And so that to me has been one of the most resounding things that I have heard from Girl Up alumni is that I knew I could lead. I knew I was a leader because I had already done it and I had already made change and I had brought people together and I had influenced. And so that's something that they carry with them. And I think when you have that innately as part of your identity, then the challenges are easier to get over. You of course it's not going to just be smooth sailing just because you feel good about your leadership and you feel confident. You're going to run into obstacles, barriers. You're going to make mistakes. You're also going to run into haters, people who do not want to hear from you or don't want you to lead them.
Sure. That
won't totally dismantle or derail you. And I think that's one of the most important things, especially for women, to be able to keep pushing and to push through. And so that's one of the things that I think is most important about what happens as part of that Girl Up experience. Excellent.
Thank you. Now, when we talk about gender equality, and just as a little definition here, gender equality is when people of all genders have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities, and societies that value women and men are equal, are safer and healthier. Everyone is affected by gender inequality. When we think about gender equality, why is it important to realize that equality is a movement and not a moment?
Yeah, I love that. That's so important because moments disappear.
Right.
Moments come and go.
Right.
And, one of the things that happens in this world that we live in around social media and the media and brands and sort of what is the thing of this moment? What is the hot topic? Equality. We don't want gender equality to be the hot topic because what happens when it fades, from excitement or from something new, the effects can't fade, so we really think of this as a movement because we're always trying to build it. We're trying to grow it, but movement also represents forward and moment represents temporary. And so I think, we know that equality benefits everyone. We're making the case. We're trying to get more and more people on board with that idea who can help to actually dismantle the things that create inequality. It can't be a hot topic, a fad, a phase.
Sure.
We need it to be entrenched. And the more people we bring into this work with us, into this movement, the more likely that is to have the legs and the longevity to actually see the real change that we want.
Right. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, though, movements are impacted by moments, by something that just gets in the way and that is a temporary thing. What happens to gender equality during a global pandemic, let's say, such as the one that we're experiencing right now with COVID-19. How are girls around the world affected, and how are they coping?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, my point at the top of this conversation is that we haven't achieved equality, right? We are
Right.
still fighting. We are still working. We still have depending on where you are in the world, or your identity, or your race, or your socioeconomic, background, or your religion, you sort of whatever identity that you bring along with your gender, you might have a little ways to go until you're equal. You might have a long ways to go till you're equal, but it is still very much in process. And so when something like a global pandemic or a natural disaster or a conflict or, war or, these things that sort of paralyze and stop or bring, set things back happen, the most unequal people are going to feel the effects of that first. And because they already weren't, sort of at the same starting point. And so we've seen that in every aspect of how this global pandemic has influenced the world and people around the world. Obviously here in the US, where, we never really got control over it. We are seeing girls around the world who fought so hard to get into school and are now out of school and may never go back to school because can they succeed in that fight twice?
Right.
We are seeing, the burden of unpaid labor, which is mostly, on the female family members, just overwhelming to equality efforts. We see women leaving the workforce in record numbers and completely disproportionate to men leaving the workplace. That is setting back equality progress at work.
Right.
And then the other aspect of that is, the gender-based violence. When things happen and they're bad and they're stressful, and you're stuck at home because you're not supposed to be going anywhere. You're supposed to be, sort of sheltering in place and isolating. For a lot of women, you're really sort of unearthing an incredibly unsafe environment where there are no other outlets. And then you put the stress of this actual pandemic, of job loss, of economic uncertainty, of frustration on top of that. And it creates an incredibly risky environment for women and girls. And so that's been one of the really distressing outcomes of an issue that was already incredibly distressing. And so I think, there aren't a lot of ways that I could say that it hasn't impacted women and girls disproportionately. And I think, again, because we were on such rocky ground with the equality strides that we have made, that it was too rocky, to withstand.
And I would think that all the good that you're trying to do is also impacted programming-wise by a pandemic where you have done certain things a certain way in the past 10 years, and now with a pandemic, you can't do them the same way. What changes did you make? Did you see some of these modifications that you made to your programming continue post-pandemic?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that we did was we shifted, most of what we had been doing traditionally in person, even globally, to virtual. And we did that pretty quickly. We also had a population that was now all of a sudden, maybe home from school, but not doing extracurricular activities, very much a lot more time on their hands and looking for an outlet. So in some ways, our movement and our work has actually progressed at an accelerated pace. In other ways, we've left some of our Girl Up members behind because digital and data access is key to be engaging virtually. And in some parts of the world, those clubs only meet at school and in person, and they don't have access to the virtual, resources. Right. And so if you're not at school and you're not in person, you probably are not actually interacting with Girl Up. And so we've been trying to be really thoughtful about how we can increase our support from Girl Up in a way to increase digital and data access. That's been the biggest challenge, I think, for us. We've made the shift pretty well. I think we have tapped into like new opportunities to connect our global community to each other,
Right.
which has been one of the most exciting things that has come out of the last year. But we are also aware that that is not universal to every girl that's a part of the Girl Up movement. And so, I think when we are able to sort of return to things being able to be in person, we will absolutely keep the virtual, but we will also look to be bringing that back and kind of re-engaging and supporting clubs that maybe have had to lapse for the time being. How can we support them in new ways to come back into the organization? So I think that's kind of the best way to put it. But lots of the things that we have gotten to do because we have shifted to virtual, we will definitely be keeping.
Yeah, it's a good reminder when you mentioned that for many of us in our pivoting and in our realization that we can do lots of things remotely, teaching, learning, all kinds of activities. But the fact of the matter is that not everybody has a computer to do so, or an internet connection that allows for that. And we tend to think that because we have it, that everybody can join in. But you're absolutely right. There is a large amount of people in this world that are far away from a computer or a reliable internet service. And so going virtual only covers perhaps a small segment. There is a large group of people that will not have any benefit from it. And like you said, if you're not connected through technology, then the question is how can you participate and what can you do on the ground? So that's we tend to forget that, but I agree with you that there is this assumption that we all have benefited through remote learning and remote activities, and many of us have. But you're so right that in many places there isn't that technology, and young women are probably, because of gatherings not happening that would normally happen in schools or in public places, there is no way of participation and no way of connecting with others.
The one piece of that has been incredibly inspiring is that the girl leaders of Girl Up, the young leaders of Girl Up who are virtually and digitally connected, are aware of that.
Right.
And so they're using their privilege and platform to try to, further create access in their communities and to sort of bridge that digital divide, if you will. And it's actually this really interesting new component of equality that they're now aware of because of this, and
Sure.
They're using their leadership and their advocacy and their activism to actually address that in their communities as well. So that has been an interesting outcome,
right.
Of their own sort of awareness and understanding of that inequality.
Now, speaking of programming, can you tell us about some of your upcoming events?
Yes, so we have our Global Leadership Summit, our Girl Up Leadership Summit every summer. We'll be hosting that again this July 13th and 14th. It is virtual again this summer. It is free. It is open to teenage girls and adult supporters who are interested in learning more about Girl Up. We'll be opening that registration probably next month. But we did host this event last summer virtually, and it was incredible. You can see some of the highlights and some of the sessions on Girl Up's YouTube channel. But we also do a monthly panel conversation that we've called our Girl Talk series. So we have an upcoming Girl Talk on Wednesday, March 24th to celebrate Women's History Month. Again, people can register for that via our website, at girlup.org, or they can watch that. It'll be streamed live on our YouTube channel as well. And we do those conversations regularly throughout the year. And then for young people who are interested in learning more about Girl Up or getting engaged in an event, maybe thinking about starting a club, we have lots of different events and boot camps all throughout the year that are all being hosted virtually right now. And all of those details are also on our website.
Great. Thank you. Now, again, I'm just amazed about the fact that your organization has not been around for decades, but has accomplished all of this in basically 10 years. What are some of your greatest accomplishments during your tenure at Girl Up?
It's hard to narrow down. I mean, it has been an incredible journey. I think that the fact that we are currently recruiting our 12th class of teen advisors. We have a teen advisory board, which is basically a global board of young women who are in high school, so entering 9th grade, entering 12th grade, who serve a year-long term and guide me, help us make sure that this is a movement that is being led by girls and that is moving in the direction that this generation wants to take it. And that board in and of itself, being able to work with those young women over these last 10 years and learn from them and evolve the organization to match their aspirations and their even sometimes demands is just something I'm just so incredibly proud that I get to do, but also proud of how they have led us forward. So that's something that sticks out to me. I think honestly, this last year, how the organization has adapted in a global pandemic through, a shift to virtual, through so many, I think, hard reckonings and conversations and dialogues and personal experiences, even on the team. The fact that it was a very hard year, but also a really strong year for the organization and for our growth and who we are going to be as an organization going forward. That is also something I am just so incredibly proud of, is really our trajectory through the last 12 months and what it has set up and opened up for who we're going to be as an organization going forward. Now,
how can people support Girl Up?
So my first thing that I always say is that if you are a young person or a young person who you think would be really interested to learn more about this work that we do, who is someone who cares about equality, who cares and is an activist in their community, please introduce them to Girl Up. We have our website, girlup.org. We are incredibly active on social media. It's at Girl Up Campaign on Instagram. We are on Facebook and TikTok and Twitter and Snapchat and all the channels. Our YouTube channel has amazing content. Any of those platforms are a great way to get to know Girl Up, but introduce Girl Up to a young person in your life. If you are a young person, go check us out. That is always my number one ask of people, because there are, even though we've had all this great accomplishment in 10 years, there are a lot of people who still don't know about Girl Up. So we're still trying to build awareness around what we're doing. And then I think, really joining us in this movement for equality, either by donating to the organization, advocating for policies that make our reality and lives, more equal, and really having those good conversations amongst your family, your friends, your communities, your networks about how can we have a future where, regardless of our gender, we have equal opportunity and equal opportunity for success. So I think sometimes actually just joining the conversation is the most important thing we can do. But I would say the second thing would be tell everybody you know about Girl Up.
Right. No, and I think that's an excellent point. Families can do a lot about this by just having conversations about it and by raising the awareness, especially if you have young females in your family that might have not heard about the organization. That would be a great way to introduce them. So parents can actually make a big difference in this too, as as actively introducing the organization in a conversation at dinner or whenever. What laws and or policies could be enacted to support your work? Are there any governments or societies that are getting it right, that are doing it better? In other words, who might be a good role model for us to look at?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that question is really important because we can do a lot of this. And if the policies are still set up in an unequal way, or if our government and our systems and our structure doesn't allow for change, then it is a bit of almost an impossible uphill battle. So, I think that some of the things that are really important to me is, what are the laws? What are the policies? What are the government programs that we need that we don't have? Paid family leave, that opportunity to have, more childcare support so that women can further their careers and can not have to step away and step back and start and stop. Those are things that absolutely impact the equality conversation. Right. I think that we have laws, and then sometimes those laws just aren't followed. They're not enforced. There are sexual harassment laws, there are discrimination laws, there are pay equality laws, and yet you still see all of those things happening. And so part of it is we also have to move from policy into cultural shift and into practice shift. And so I think that in a place like the US, sometimes that's actually the more important place that we need to see change, because, we've had a lot of legislation over the last few decades that has been trying to remove the sort of blatant inequalities, but you still see them pervade. I think it's interesting. I don't have like a specific country that is like, oh, they're doing really good, because again, we haven't achieved that equality everywhere. But what I do look at is when we have equal representation in government, in parliaments, in Congress, and in these sort of elected officials, when you have heads of state who are female, or cabinets that have equal female representation, it's very likely that they're doing a bit better on the equality metrics, because there are females in positions of power and positions of decision making who can influence that. Versus a group of men who you're trying to advocate to, persuade, negotiate, convince. When you have actually achieved more equal balance at the highest levels of government, you actually see more equal policies, but also more equal practice and implementation of those policies. So when I look around the world and I see strong female leaders and leadership, and see them doing things really well, to me, those two things go together.
Great. Thank you. Now, 1 in 3 girls and women will experience gender-based violence in their lifetime. And you talked about this earlier, how this pandemic has actually probably even propelled this and made it even a worse situation than it was before the pandemic. This is one of the most prevalent human rights violations in the world, which knows no social, economic, or national boundaries. What are the hardest challenges Girl Up faces in tackling gender-based violence internationally versus here in the US?
So for me, one of the core issues that, is consistent across so many aspects of equality and inequality, and shows up in such a very specific way when we talk about gender-based violence and safety from violence, is the devaluation of girls and women as equals, as equal humans with equal rights. I think that when I think about this phenomenon, pandemic in and of itself, it's that the girls and women in around the world and in places where, you see this, and within relationships, within cultures, within society, is that those lives aren't valued in the same way. They're there to be abused, to be taken, to have power asserted over, to have a fight against equality be taken out on them. And it is the worst representation of what we are fighting against. This idea that my power takes away from your power, or my equality makes you less equal, or my seat at the table means there's not a seat for you. How that all comes out is really in the fact that girls and women are actually fighting to be valued. And that shows up in a lot of ways in our work. We want to be valued for our ideas, for our contributions, but we also want to be valued as human beings who have a right to not be abused, to have a right to be safe from violence.
Right.
Just as is sort of an underlying assumption for men and as humans. So to me, that's the underlying thing. That's the thing that, every time I say girl power, or I highlight a young woman who's doing amazing things, I'm trying to change the perception of her value, of what she brings to the world and to all of us, including men. And so that maybe eventually, if our perceived value is equal, if our actual value is matched by the way that we're treated, maybe we can start to see some of these statistics around the prevalence of gender-based violence start to shift.
Right. Now, you have been saying in this podcast that your mission is not accomplished yet, and it's in progress, and there is lots more to do. Looking into the future, where do you see Girl Up, let's say 5 years from now or 10 years from now? What would you like to see accomplished?
So we like we've talked about, we have been operating for 10 years. We now have Girl Up alumni out in the workforce, graduating from college, entering their careers. In another 5-10 years, we will have more, of our alumni out in government, in media, in corporate, in service roles. And as we get more young women who have been transformed by their experience with Girl Up, who care about the world, who see the role that they can have in making the world a better place, what I really hope that we can start to see is this changing, is equality being close to being realized, of equal opportunity for these young women to advance, to have power, to be leaders, to make decisions, to change the status of so many things that we're challenged by right now. And I don't think that 5 or 10 years is too far out to actually start to see some of the impact of that. We are planting a seed in a garden that's going to be grown and watered and cultivated for a long time. But I really do hope that some of the seeds that we planted years ago, we'll start to see the fruits of that in the short term, and then certainly over the long term. Part of that is, as an organization, I hope that we will continue to keep growing, that we will bring more young people and young women into this movement, and that, we'll start to see this valuation of girls and women and this fight for equality and this movement really grow and keep growing until we don't need it anymore.
Excellent. No, I totally agree with you. I think what is really neat about your structure is that, like you said, former students are actually turning into mentors. And so in years to come, there will be more of those that will have gone through your program and that now can inspire others that are joining the program. I think that's a really neat aspect of when thinking about how to grow this and how to make this more impactful. You're doing it because you have the structure in place that that allows for those young women that are quote unquote graduating from the program are now then turned into mentors and teachers in the future. I think that's just a really neat aspect of Girl Up. Thank you so much, Melissa Kilby, for joining us today on International Voices. We would like to encourage our local audience to go to www.girlup.org to learn more about the issues facing girls around the world and explore ways you can get involved here in Montana. You can also follow Melissa Kilby on social media at Melissa Girl Up to stay up to date on the actions with Girl Up. In a continuation of Women's History Month, during our next International Voices podcast on Thursday, April 1st, I will be speaking with Anita Lucchesi, Executive Director of the Sovereign Bodies Institute in Montana, to discuss the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls movement. As always, thank you for listening. Those of you who are regularly tuning in to International Voices know, being of German descent, I usually end with a German farewell. Dankeschön fürs Zuhören. International Voices is brought to you by Global and Cultural Affairs of Arts Missoula and the Trail 1033. This and previous International Voices podcasts can be found at artsmissoula.org and trail1033.com.